Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Not Too Comic Book. This being a show where I talk about TV shows that are adaptations of comic books. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Dark Matter, as well as the latest episode of Wynonna Earp. Like always, if I'm talking about something that you want to listen to, you can always look in the description down below. I include the time when I start talking about each respective show. So for example, if you want to hear what I say about this week's episode of Dark Matter, you can skip to what I say about this week's episode of Wynonna Earp. Well, the first thing we're going to talk about is this week's episode of Dark Matter. A very good episode, very interesting twist to it. It seems like I got possibly the whole android situation wrong. Well, most definitely with the current circumstances. But I was thinking like the whole, last episode I had this whole theory about the whole Sarah situation, or she took control of the android and tried to kill 3 is what the thing at the end was making me think. And I had my mind set on being like, eventually Sarah's going to get like that. But it turns out that's not the case at all. Because the android starts acting a little weird this episode and 5 kind of catches on. Turns out she was hacked by because it was something we'd seen previously, but no context to it. It was a person in a chair. It turns out it's someone that Rio had hacking into the android, so it must have been a long process. The reason why it takes, it's only just coming back to it now. Because something did cross my mind when this was all happening. I was like, right, we never actually got to see all of the assassins, go after him. We've only seen one assassin go after him, so now I guess it's one of the other mercenaries coming after him now. But this is at least one of them. There was a handful of them. Side note, I appreciate that, 3 and 2 were walking down the hallway, and they saw, that one assassin still in the wall. They're like, yeah, we need to fix that at some point in time. I was like, I love that. It's just, they didn't even have to include that, but I appreciate the fact that they did that. Not unless that's supposed to be kind of a nod to something coming forward in the future, whether someone else pops up with phasing technology or something, that, or just someone related to that said, I don't know. It was just kind of a nice touch that I appreciated, but it turns out that everything was just part of this hack, or maybe even that, the android going from room to room and pointing a gun at 3. Because I was like, because in retrospect, it's if it was Sarah, she'd have access to the ship, so she know exactly what room was 3. It was no, it was just the person trying to get a lay of the land of the ship themselves while they had control of the android. It was just little by little they were getting control over her and just wiping her memory so she wouldn't know, or at least putting her in a state where she was kind of unconscious to realize what was going on. I don't know, it's hard to... Well, that was last episode that happened, right? So it's not like he's probably had access to her for a long time, but at the very least he's been gaining more and more access. I mean, maybe it's a situation, if we look back, we might see earlier signs of it, but I don't know. Still does not knock out the whole Sarah situation, though Sarah was a big help this episode, but there's still a part of my brain that's I don't know. Because there's that whole situation with that guy that died, because obviously Six is working with those independent colony delegates and everything, and there was that one dude that died, but it's even Android told 5 later on, it's yeah, it wasn't me, because she's I couldn't do anything, but I saw everything that dude that had control of me did, so he didn't kill her, so it's kill that dude, so it's who did then? 5 didn't bring it up to the others, so I don't know whether it was something that was kind of discussed off screen, or whether she was just because they let the other delegates off. So I'm guessing that whole situation, I don't know. Part of me was wondering, could it have been along with that thing, or the whole Sarah thing? I'm still on the lookout for that. But once again, it's it's one of those situations where I'm starting to feel like a D-bag, because I'm suspecting someone, but they haven't done anything. But the moment they do something, I'm going to feel awesome. But the moment they continue to do nothing wrong, and then I'm going to feel like I'm complete another D-bag when I'm proven wrong. It's yeah, that's not where this story, that particular, I'm so doubting Sarah, but it's just I feel like that's just the ultimate situation, because, everything's always tailored to be the android will go rogue. As we see, something goes down where it's the android in some shape or form has a falling out with the Raza to the point, to the point that the android looks very different in that last moment she had with 5 in the future. It seems like she might have turned against the Raza. Like I said, at least one of those moments we saw was of the fake, the alternate reality Raza. So that's kind of a situation all on its own. But yeah, this whole thing was a plan by 4, which I wasn't necessarily seeing that happening until I realized at the last second. He had a sick fight with 2, which is kind of interesting. We haven't had some hardcore hand-to-hand combat like that in a while. No surprise, 2 easily handling herself against 4. well, Rio, I should say, bringing to knowledge to her that it's like it wasn't him who actually killed Nix, that he was pissed when he found out, but it was only until the android told him that's when he found out about Nix, which 2 does believe him, but that still doesn't excuse everything else he did at the conference and everything, which even then he's like, well, those are company people and stuff like that. Do you really feel sorry for them? But even then, it's like those are innocent people that die, that you let all this happen just to set some stuff in motion. Once again, that alternate reality timeline is very different from this one. Just because things possibly worked out for Rio in that timeline doesn't mean they're going to work out for you in this one. Also, it's like you don't know where that Rio ended up. Like when everything played out the way it did, you doing everything you're doing, like who's to say things worked out for that Rio like, later on in his timeline? Maybe they didn't. Definitely, we know they're definitely not going to. But luckily working together, 5 and Sarah were able to kind of, not kind of, basically save the day. I did appreciate that the term that kind of turned the android back on temporarily was hot chocolate. I love little touches like that. I'm surprised the android doesn't drink hot chocolate more often. Maybe she does and we just never get to see it. I thought that was just kind of a little something special between 5 and android. But 4 was making all these promises to the independent colony people to go back to their people and be like, okay, we're going to set up this whole, like, you guys can join the League of Autonomous Worlds. And it's like 6 is like super against all this because it's like you can't listen to Rio. Rio is like, oh, you have my support and backing and stuff like that when I win this war and everything. It's like you can't trust him, because it's like he only wants your support because he needs help winning his war, essentially, a war that he can't win. But he's saying he will win it. I don't know. Once again, we kind of know Zyron's future. Then again, who's to say? I mean, nah, because it seems like everything's set in stone, because that was the whole point of sending the android back, so things would play out to the way point, so they would get to where they are. So there's no, like, changing that. Those things are set in stone. So it seems like they did join, even though 6 was super against it. But it's like, for them, it's like they needed to back him because Ferris Corp was coming after them. I mean, that was another thing, too. We never found out, because, I mean, either it was one of them or something, but it's like, how, because Ferris Corp attacked them at the beginning, so it's like, how did Ferris Corp find us? I don't know. He was the one that died was the one that used to be connected to one of Ferris Corp's colonies that's wanting independence now, so a very closely tied thing. And it was something too interesting that 2 brought up to that particular guy, and it was still something I feel like everyone should probably walk away from knowing. It's like, hey, they won't care about you. They'll kill you the moment they get the chance, It's like Ferris Corp wouldn't do that. They need us. It's like, no, what they need is your minds. You guys are expendables. You guys are causing too much of a ruckus. The moment you tried to aim for independence, you became an obstacle. You became a burden that they have to deal with now. So it's going to be a lot easier just to wipe this slate clean by killing you guys and just hiring someone new to work the mines for them. They can most likely do it with less of a headache and cheaper, most likely. So, and less complaints and stuff like that. So, and I just thought that was kind of an interesting thing. Like, granted, 2 only said it to him, but I feel like that's still something everyone should kind of walk away from knowing. So, but we still don't know whether it's one of those 3 or was there an outside situation, whether there are like leaks within each said organization. I mean, also, to be fair, now that I'm completely almost ignoring it, let's not forget about the whole alternate reality Raza. We do know that Portia, from the alternate reality, met with Neiman, so there's always a possibility, like I said, because their timelines are a little bit off, so she already knew ahead of time where they would go for a meeting and stuff like that, because it's already happened in her world, so maybe that's something that applied in that particular situation, and maybe she led them, so maybe it wasn't any of them. Still doesn't explain who killed that dude. So there's still the window of opportunity for it to be a Sarah situation, but maybe not. But going back to it, the 4 situation, 4, I mean, obviously they're all copies and everything, but 4, like, had a discussion with the group. It's like, you know this won't stop. Yes, I know the blank draw might not be working, but at very least, hey, why not give it over even if it doesn't work? Just on the off chance that it does work, they can't put it in Rio's hands. They can't let someone like him have access to something like that, who would multiply it, put it on all these different ships and stuff like that, and it makes Zyron too powerful to be checked. And the last thing you want is an army. If it's someone independent like them, trying to do the right thing, then that's one thing, but to give it to an entire army is another thing entirely. So now the group is still at odds. Even with everything said and done, it's like, and Rio is like, this won't stop until one of us is dead. And it's like, I wish it didn't have to come to this. And you see that Rio doesn't want that either. There's even a moment earlier in the episode where he went into his room. I don't know whether it's just kind of connecting to who he was as 4, trying to remember, the times he was on the ship. Maybe a combination of remembering who he was as Rio, being on the Raza originally, or maybe just entirely him as 4. Maybe it's just to remind him about Nyx, because him and Nyx spent a lot of time in their training. So maybe it's actually all of the above. Maybe him placing that sword down was him saying goodbye to the Raza forever. Like, he never, maybe this was his, like, maybe on some level he felt like, going forward, obviously he can remain as king of Emperor of Zyron, but also stay close with the Raza. But now it's like they're at odds with everything. And so they'll be their enemies from this moment forward. Have been for a while. So, but this moment forward, they will be coming after each other with everything they've got. So, also, I feel bad for that hacker dude, because now he's trapped inside of his own mind. He's not dead, but his brain is just, his consciousness, his brain is kind of shut off away from his body. So I kind of feel bad for him too. So, but 5 was kind of like, he kind of deserved it, because he kind of, what he did to you. So I was like, don't do that to my friend. I also appreciate the whole fact of like 5 doing the android's hair. I thought that was super cute and awesome. So, but the episode does not end on a happy note, whereas we had them trying to test out the Blink Dog, trying to fix it and everything, activate it, and a shockwave went out and knocks everyone on the ship out, android included. I caught a glimpse of something, so it made my brain immediately goes, okay, so is everyone going to wake up in some alternate reality in their own sense of like, their brains were sent to some alternate reality. Maybe their brains were flung into the future or something like that. I don't know. Like, that's where my mind is. I caught a glimpse of the next episode, but I had the TV muted, so I didn't even hear any audio, just because I try to avoid as much as possible, because I feel like I'm being spoiled when I watch the next episode. I don't know if I've ever really brought that up, like I've ever explained why I do that. I always talk about doing it, but I don't know if I've outright ever explained it. So hopefully this is the first time I've ever had to explain that. But if ever you wonder why I'm like that, like I never really know. It's because I try to avoid the previous. I wouldn't be surprised when the next episode rolls around. I was like, oh, I had no idea that was coming. So, type of thing. So, but maybe it's something else entirely different. Like I said, because it's like they're just knocked out. It's not like the Raza went anywhere to an alternate reality. So, or maybe it did something to their brains. Maybe it's not even like an alternate reality, but it puts them into some hyper realistic dream state. I don't know. We'll really have to wait till the next episode to find out. But like I said, very good episode, and I'm very interested to see where the next episode takes us. Also, really quickly, a final note I still need to add on. It was kind of brought up last episode too. It's like we still don't know about the whole situation between 4 and 3. There was no interaction between them this episode, so we never actually I think 3 still has not had the opportunity to ask. Is like, what do you know about me, Rio, that you're trying to avoid? Once again, I brought it up last episode. Looks from Sarah make it seem like she knows exactly what it is. What it is exactly, we don't know. But it's like, what is so bad that 4 has kind of been avoiding him? At the very least, that's what 3 kept feeling like when 4 got his memories back. So there's still that. Like I said, I still believe that's going to be a situation where what might ultimately lead to the group going their separate ways is the fact is that ultimately they will have to get their memories back for different reasons. 3, to find out whatever this whole situation is, or maybe it's something else entirely different. 2, I feel like it's going to be connected to her past or her whole like birth and everything, like to be prepared for her creator as well as just everyone connected to it. Because that's still a storyline element that hasn't popped up yet this season. It's like the last time we left off, it was Will Wheaton's character. He was meeting with some dude that's like, yo, we gotta deal with this whole Patricia situation. Isn't her real name Rebecca? I forgot. It's like, we gotta deal with this whole situation. It's like basically like terminate her because they need her for the dude who runs the whole situation. Nevertheless, I mean, we'll just have to wait and see whether anything will come of that or not, relatively soon or not. And now moving on to this week's episode of Wynonna Earp. A very good episode with some very interesting developments. Obviously a big part of the episode deals with the whole aspect of like trying to figure out the whole baby daddy situation. Because apparently I was wondering, like, it was like, oh, it wasn't until the whole possessed Wynonna situation I was like, oh, Dolls isn't even in the runnings to be the baby daddy because like nothing's ever happened between him and Wynonna for professional reasons. I mean, obviously some stuff happened, but nothing happened like stuff happened with Doc. But she brings it up to Waverly. There's still a chance that Doc may not be the baby daddy. Well, she kind of spills that to him later on because Wynonna was supposed to tell him and everything. It's like I was hoping on everything. What was going to happen is Doc will kind of slip up and like be like, "What are you talking about?" She's like, "Oh." Like she kind of allude to it, but then she'd be like, "Wait, what are you talking about?" And he said, "I'm talking about something else. What are you talking about?" And then she just kind of move away, but it's like, no, she accidentally let it slip. I was like, "Oh, you didn't know that you might not be the dad." Okay, this is awkward. So I mean, that sucks. Worst way to find out about it, considering the whole situation with Doc's situation this episode. But we'll get to his situation soon enough. What was interesting is we find out that a possible baby daddy is a revenant named Jonas. Apparently, this took place back during season 1 after she dealt with the 7 and Wynonna was just kind of drinking herself under just because it was her way of dealing with everything that she had gone through and like, you know, killing people, revenant or not, she was still killing people, dealing with that. And, you know, that was kind of what kept her going, the anger and rage towards the 7 that attacked the homestead. You know, that took Willow from her, that put them in that situation for her dad to be killed and stuff like that. So, but it seems like Jonas was the only one that recognized her as the heir, but then was like, why would you do that? Why would you sleep with her anyway? It's like, oh, because he's a jackass that tries to use it against her later on. It's like, oh, the heir is so easy. Oh, blah, 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 slider. It's like, you're just a scummy piece of shit. But then he brings up something interesting. He's like, "Oh, we could be the next Adam and Eve." Because I was thinking that myself as the episode was going on. I was like, "Can revenants even get someone pregnant? Is that even possible?" It's like it seems like it is possible to get pregnant with a human, which does beg the question that revenants can also get together too. It also begs the question: do you think this might be connected to the whole Constance situation? Because we know her children were something else. I mean, she might be a witch, but Constance at the base core was still human. I would assume that still would act. So you would think that her children's dad was something else, because that's still something we have not covered yet at all. Especially with Constance kind of coming back in the storyline. Granted, not in the way I thought she would. I mean, she came back as a severed head. Once again, that plays in the Doc story. Well, I mean, I'll go ahead and bring it up now, but it's like maybe that's because he alluded to the fact that it's like, oh, there was talk of it happening before, but it's just a rumor amongst revenants about that happening. The camera kind of pans at Waverly, but it's just her kind of having an inquisitive look in her face, just listening to him talking and everything. Well, more so an inquisitive look plus being pissed at him for all the trash talking he's doing Wynonna. But then it was making me wonder, could that be them referencing that? Could that be like what Waverly is? But nevertheless, I don't think the baby's Jonas's. I think it's most likely that the baby is Doc's. But nevertheless, that would bring up an interesting thing, like about the baby being both revenant and human, what that means for the child, which Wynonna's kind of got it set in her head as like, no matter what, even if this baby turned out to be yours, I'm gonna raise this baby to be good. On the top of that, to be an Earp, which would then, you know, obviously Wynonna would plan on taking care of the curse herself, but what that would mean is that this baby would become the next heir, and this half revenant, half Earp baby would go off killing other revenants. So it's kind of like almost like a middle finger to them. Like, I mean, we don't even know what that would do. Like, would that cancel out the Earp blood, it being a revenant, if that was the case? I mean, also begs the question, Doc's kind of a special case himself. Like, if he is the baby's daddy, like, would that have any adverse effects as well? Like, either way you tilt the scales, I mean, at the end of the episode, Wynonna's still kind of up in the air about the whole situation. I still think it's going to be Doc, because he kind of, like, storytelling purpose-wise, they're like, oh, that'd be cool. It's like, you know, because it kind of falls on, well, I mean, depends on the storyline you pull from, like what a Nephilim is. Some stuff is like a Nephilim's half human, half demon. Other things are like angel and human or demon, like, you know, different, like, but being a hybrid is always an interesting element to a story, but it's like, considering who the dad is, like, I think that would suck for Wynonna's sake. So I'm hoping on everything it'd be, you know, I mean, at least for Doc's sake. But even then, Wynonna's like, yeah, if it was Doc's baby, it still would kind of suck, because that meant like Doc hooked up and impregnated one of his best friend's descendant, and that's still a little, that's kind of murky area too. So no matter how you slice it, kind of a crazy area. I also appreciate this episode being like, I love that Wynonna and Nicole kind of get to bond a little bit more. It's like, oh yeah, the sibling and the girlfriend kind of bonding. We kind of got to see Nicole's kind of, get a little drunk this episode. Also, the fact is that she can't lie worth anything, which is so interesting that she kept Waverly's secret this entire time. But it's like the moment like Waverly was pressuring her about an answer, it's like, oh, we're at a strip club. It's like, Wynonna's like, shut your damn mouth. What are you doing? Even to the point she had to throw her phone in a beer. She's like, okay, I'll admit it. I deserve that. It's like, well, it would have helped if I knew I should have known better because I was bringing a narc along. Okay, she's like, that's fair. But even while intoxicated, Nicole is still a pretty good shot in being able to hit the electricity box like that without making a mistake of shooting someone else. So that was pretty impressive. But I guess to be fair, in Nicole's shoes, it's like, you don't want to lie to your girlfriend, especially someone like Waverly. You're just like, oh, like Waverly's so kind and sweet, and it's like you don't want to lie to her. So that was just kind of an adorable thing to me. I also learned a little bit more about Wynonna's past. And apparently, she worked at that strip club before, because even one of the dudes kind of wrote up. I was like, oh, Aphrodite's, and she's like, Nicole's like, oh, who's Aphrodite? But once again, I still appreciate that being the element that the story has taken, in the sense of like that pregnancy, like obviously still being a part of the storyline, but in the fact of the matter is in the form that it is. Like, it's not like she got progressively pregnant throughout the rest of the season. Progressively pregnant, that she showed more and more throughout the rest of the season. It's like, nope, like that whole thing last episode kind of screwed it up. So now she's stuck like I'm about to say 9 months. But she's a good amount in, because it's been about 28 weeks, so that's like she's like 7 months along. But what's also interesting is that it finally came out from Waverly. She finally did tell Wynonna the truth, that like, hey, I might not even be your sister. I might not even be an Earp. So I'm thinking they are going to be sisters, but I don't think she's going to be an Earp. I think they might have the same mom but a different dad. That's what I'm thinking. But maybe they come from completely different families altogether. I don't know. It makes you wonder. I'm just curious. It makes you wonder, did the writers already have that in mind from the very beginning? I mean, to be fair, that came up later in the season, but it makes you wonder, was that something that was like right from the beginning? It's like, oh, we're always going to have that. Because I don't think that's something that really clicked in my head. I don't know. Like, I don't remember what I really said when I was talking about the first season. So, because that was something that kind of caught me by surprise when I was rewatching season 1. I was like, oh, right. I had completely forgot about that story element of like, oh, she's not actually an Earp. So I don't remember if I actually commented on that or not, or whether I really understood that at the time. Because when I started doing these, like, originally I was a complete idiot. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm still an idiot now. So there's certain details and things that, like, it takes a while for certain things to process over. It's not until I rewatch something like, oh, that makes a lot more sense. It's like, why was I an idiot not catching that before? And, luckily there's a lot more people out there are a lot smarter than me and catch on to things. It's like, you idiot, it meant this, and that. It's like, oh, thank you for pointing it out, because I am in fact an idiot. I miss the most basic of things sometimes. So I really appreciate that, guys. I don't know if I say that enough. Anyways, nevertheless, that's a thing on its own. So, because for what Waverly, what kind of really hit her to finally made her do it, because it's like, okay, I want you to teach this baby all about the Earp history and everything, because it's like, hey, this baby might not have a dad in this particular situation, but it's like, even if Jonas ended up being the dad, it's like, whatever the case may be, it's like, this baby is ours. This is part of our family. We'll raise this baby together. We got this together, sis. So, but now they're we know that Nicole has secretly been looking into it, but now like Wynonna's going to be on it too. There's going to be her being like, no, Bobo told you this, so you can't be believing Bobo, but I'm sure, Waverly's going to be like, well, there's more to it than that, Wynonna. So we'll kind of see. I'm sure it's not going to change anything, because for Wynonna, it's like, you've been my little sister for forever. Like, you not being my biological sister doesn't mean anything. Blood doesn't mean anything. You're still my family. You're still my sister, so. But on the flip side of the episode, Doc is dealing with his whole situation. And before we really get into it, I love that whole situation of Doc being hunted and everything. I was like, what kind of dastardly things did Doc do to kind of warrant all this attention that they've been hunting him for 130 odd years or whatever? I mean, they think it's like, oh, you've been out running this long. It's like, no, I was in a well for most of that time. So But basically, this all happened because Constance's head was cut off and it was burned. They are connected. So I guess because she was underneath all the salt, that it nullified the spell. Maybe it's just because it was her head that was cut off and because her body is magical or whatever, it's still technically alive. Because it's like, how did that come about? And why does her head look like that? Did it just dry out from like... I mean, because she can't die. The salt weakened her, but she can't die. She still kept her longevity and everything. But I guess she just dried out because of exposure and being dehydrated, being out there for, you know... all the way back in season 1, which is like a while back, as we can tell with Wynonna's pregnancy, that was a long time ago. So, but it's like, what this is, you know, like the thing is like the fact is they're connected. So I feel like if she died, which, you know, that's supposed to be the thing, that Doc would die too. But I guess, like I said, there's some technicality there that I'm curious. Maybe we'll kind of get explained later on. But basically, with her head being burned, it meant that she released whatever spell was concealing Doc or whatever. Or maybe when her head got burned, it released a connection between them or something. I don't know. Like I said, maybe in the next episode. But it's like, no, all this whole situation is about Doc having slept with some judge's wife. I don't know whether they were saying like he definitely slept with her, but I don't remember if they were saying it twice. So it's like, was it because he slept with her twice, or did he sleep with her one time but attempted to sleep with her a second time? Was it the attempt to sleep with her a second time, or he actually slept with her the second time? I think it's he slept with her the second time. But nevertheless, which obviously pissed Dolls off because it's like this. It's like oh, shows more how much who Doc is. It's like, oh, you don't care about anybody. You need to get your crap together. You're supposed to be a dad and everything. It's like, well, possibly baby's not mine. I'm sure that'll make you happy with the whole, you know, being in love with Wynonna situation, which kind of puts them all in. Like I said, it's a whole love triangle situation because he cares about Wynonna, but at the same time, he knows how Dolls feels about her, and he knows how she feels about Dolls. So, but then again, there's the whole like him and Rosita thing, but maybe nothing will come about it. I don't know. But I love that that's what started this whole situation. Then again, it was back in the day, so it's like a much seriouser crime than it is now. But the whole situation was made worse by Jeremy because he did the whole spell of trying to work, like, you know, make it so like, oh yeah, we can like avoid the widow's like paralyzing poison. Which apparently they still don't have any information on, because apparently Black Badge didn't get around to studying everything that was in their facility. Apparently the widows had been there for like 100 years, so they know next to nothing on them because they never really got around to cataloging them and understanding them a lot. So, and speaking of them, like, we still don't know what it is exactly Tucker did for them. Because something I misinterpreted last episode was I was thinking like, oh, like they had already found the second seal and they were, the seal in Shorty's was the third seal. It's like, no, the seal in Shorty's was the second seal. They're still looking for the third one. That's what I thought that was all about. But it's like, no, that's what they were referencing. The fact that they already found the second seal, that they knew where it was, but they were in the processes of probably like trying to locate a third one, I think, so. Or at the very least, that was the time dude trying to tell them, like, oh, it's not just 2 seals, there's a third seal, so. But now that's what they're looking for, so. It's all about letting something rise up, so they're bringing something back to life. They kind of have to handle this situation on their own. It's kind of interesting because they seem powerful and everything, but they seem like bumbling idiots a little bit to a certain extent. It's like they're kind of flying by the seat of their pants with this whole situation, or just trying. I mean, Wynonna's kind of in on them. He's like, she knows something's up because Mercedes isn't acting like herself. Once again, I'll bring it up. We still don't know what happened to Mercedes and her sister. Last time we saw, they just had their faces ripped off. Now, whether they're dead or not, I don't know. We still don't know what Tucker's got up his sleeve. I'm sure that's going to come back after Waverly. Because he's got his twisted ideas of her for whatever reason. I don't know. He's become obsessed with her. Last episode kind of showed us that. And I kind of felt like that might have been where it was going anyway. But I don't know. It's like, what did they really want for him? You know, why the gardener specifically did they choose him? And hopefully that's something we'll kind of get an answer to soon enough. Luckily, kind of going back to it, but luckily Doc's whole situation got handled really well. I do appreciate the whole, like, how them being bound together worked, you know, like Doc is being hung up like that, and by pushing Jeremy and making him like lay flat or whatever, like it makes Doc kind of float sideways. The guys are ghosts, so nothing they did hurt them, but Dolls could. I mean, because I think he said, like, nothing of this world could hurt me, but then he ends up punching the dude. I couldn't place him at first. I don't know if it's the same dude or not, but it's the main dude. I think his name is Reeves. Isn't that the dude who plays the captain or lieutenant or whatever on Arrow? Like, I see that actor in a lot of sense. I don't know if that's him or am I... Like, that, just, he looked like a familiar face. I think it might be that actor, the same actor, or it might be a different person entirely. I don't know. Same thing for the actor who played Jonas. I know him from something, but I just can't place it. And kind of since I was bringing up the whole Jonas thing, it's always interesting to me that still kind of comes up in conversation about, like, putting down revenants. Like, you know, Nicole referred to it as executing someone. Was like, but a part of me like always looks at it a little different because it's like they're not human. To be fair, they were human at one point in time. I guess there's a difference between executing a revenant and executing an outright demon, because it's like revenants were humans at one point in time. You know how no matter how twisted they are, they still have some humanity to. And I guess in Jonas's case, he hasn't necessarily done anything bad, so being put down, it's just, I don't know. I mean, other than being an asshole. I don't know. It's always interesting to me, like, that technicality being there. But I guess, like, no matter what the case may be, you know, it's still cold-blooded, which is still kind of interesting because it's, like, the third time I've mentioned that, considering, like, across all 3 recordings tonight. I just thought that was kind of interesting that subject has kind of come up. Nevertheless, getting back to it, like, I do appreciate that because they were ghosts, nothing could affect them, but Dawes was able to because of whatever is in him is otherworldly. Still labeling him as a dragon with the whole fire-breathing thing. Still don't know whether it'll go any further than that. I mean, we haven't really seen any relapses, so I wonder, was that like a, like I still think it's still in him, but maybe that one-shot medication was enough to hold him over. Maybe he needs less shots, or, you know, the time to get his next shot isn't around yet, or maybe like that was kind of a all out at once fire breath is what I was thinking before, but then I was quickly like, no, it can't be, because the fact of the matter is he wouldn't be able to do what he did, or maybe like the symptoms of it are gone, but the after effects are still there to make him something else, even though he might not be something else. I don't know. But Dawes did say some very nice things about Doc being like, hey, yes, he's a pain in the ass, I get it, but he's a nice, honest, honorable man, that he's not the same man that he was anymore, and he's a guy that, I mean, I'm glad to call him brother. And it's like, oh, and then Doc is like, you mean what you say? It's like, no, man, I was just buying time. I mean, what? Shut up. And it's like, you meant it. You like Doc. Admit it. Like I said, it's just so interesting because they went off hating each other so much last season to the moment they meet up again this season. It was like, yo, what's up, dude? Yeah. Like, kind of like bromance brewing. I just thought that was kind of cool. And even Jeremy was like, you two guys. So that was kind of cool. So, it seems like next episode will be the episode that Doc finds out about the constant situation, because he's like, he knows like something's off for the ghosts that have been able to find him. I also appreciate that, Dawes kind of like was fanboying a little. He's like, dude, you're like the reason I became a cop in the first place. And the guy's like, yeah, sure, whatever, weirdo. So, like I said, a very good episode. I'm very interested to see where everything goes in the next episode. Like I said, like, Wynonna knows something's up with Mercedes and Beth. She's on the right trail, whether she really realizes it or not, but she definitely knows something's up. Still don't, like I said, don't know where Tucker's up to. Then we got to deal with the, you know, still baby daddy situation. If Jonas is the baby daddy, I don't know if they'd ever really tell Doc or Dawes the whole situation. I think that's going to be something that stays between the 3 of them. Nicole, Wynonna, and Waverly, you know, not the subject you really want to bring up. Once again, though, I still personally believe it's most likely Doc's baby, but we'll just kind of have to wait and see. But really, that's all I want to talk about in this episode. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.